Look, I'm sitting here in my office after another fight night, and the same damn conversation keeps coming up. The performance bonuses. $50,000. 4 fighters. Simple math, right? Wrong. People think it's just about who had the best fight, who got the biggest finish, who made the crowd go crazy. If it was that simple, I wouldn't be getting calls from managers, agents, and fighters themselves asking why their guy didn't get his piece of the pie. But here's the thing, nobody wants to admit it's never been that simple. Not when you're running a business this size, not when you've got shareholders breathing down your neck, and definitely not when you've got fighters who think they deserve something just because they showed up and did their job. The bonus system wasn't created to make friends. It was created to reward moments that made people want to buy the next pay-per-view. And sometimes that has nothing to do with who threw the most punches or who bled the most. See, when we started giving out these bonuses years ago, it was different. The sport was different. We had guys who were happy to get an extra 10 grand for a knockout. Now I've got fighters demanding explanations for why their wrestling clinic didn't earn them $50,000 while some guy who got submitted in the first round walks away with a check because the crowd was on their feet. The rules are what they are because they have to be. You can't reward every single performance, you can't make everyone happy, and you sure as hell can't let fighters think they get to dictate how the business operates. These bonuses aren't participation trophies, they're business investments. But let me tell you about the conversations that happen after the cameras stop rolling, the ones where I'm getting pressure from all sides about who should get what. It's not just about the fight you saw on TV, it's about the fighter who just signed a new deal and needs to be kept happy. It's about the guy who's been loyal to the company for 8 years and finally had his breakthrough moment. It's about the storyline we need for the next card, and yeah, sometimes it's about the fighter who brings more eyeballs to the screen. I remember one night, we had this incredible back and forth war between 2 unranked guys. Blood everywhere, both men refusing to quit, crowd going absolutely insane. Technical fight of the year candidate. But you know what else happened that night? A ranked contender got a clean knockout in 30 seconds that set up a title eliminator. Guess who got the bonus? The knockout. Because that knockout was worth millions in future pay-per-view buys. The war between 2 guys nobody had heard of. Great fight, huge respect, but it didn't move the needle for the business. That's the part people don't want to understand. This isn't boxing where one promoter controls everything and can make whatever decision he wants with his own money. We've got a public company, we've got broadcast partners, we've got obligations that go way beyond making fighters feel good about their performances. The political side comes in when you've got agents working the phones, when you've got managers who know how to play the game. They'll call me up and remind me about their fighter's last 3 performances, about how he's never complained about taking short notice fights, about how he's always professional in his media obligations. That's politics, but it's also business. Because the fighter who causes problems, who shows up overweight, who talks trash about the company on social media, he's not getting the benefit of the doubt when it comes to bonus time. I've had fighters confront me directly about this stuff. They'll corner me at the hotel after the fights and want to know why their knockout didn't get rewarded. Sometimes I can explain it to them, sometimes I can't. Sometimes the explanation is that their knockout happened on the undercard where nobody saw it, while the performance that got rewarded happened in front of 15 million people on broadcast television. Sometimes it's because their opponent was making his debut and getting knocked out by a veteran doesn't carry the same weight as knocking out a ranked opponent. But then you get the situations that really test the system. I'll never forget this one night where we had a female fighter put on an absolute clinic. Dominated a former champion, looked like she was ready for a title shot, everything was perfect. Clear-cut performance bonus, right? Except that same night, we had a heavyweight throw 1 punch and end the fight in 8 seconds. The heavyweight got the bonus. Why? Because that 8-second knockout was already being shared across every social media platform before the fighter had even left the octagon. That's the kind of moment that creates new fans, that makes people who have never watched MMA before want to see what this sport is about. The female fighter, she was pissed. Her team was pissed. Hell, I felt bad about it. But at the end of the day, I'm not running a charity. I'm running a business that employs hundreds of people and entertains millions more. When Conor came up, everything changed about how these bonuses worked. Suddenly, it wasn't just about rewarding good performances, it was about managing expectations, about making sure that the fighters who were helping us reach new audiences felt appreciated. Conor never needed the $50,000, but giving it to him sent a message to every other fighter on the roster about what we valued. Performance, yes, but also star power, also marketability, also the ability to make people care about what happened next. That created a whole new set of problems. Now, every fighter with a knockout thought they deserved the same treatment as Conor. Every submission artist who tapped out a decent opponent thought they had earned their place in the main event of the next pay-per-view. The bonus system became less about rewarding great moments and more about managing egos and expectations. But here's where it really got complicated. After we started becoming this massive global company, the bonuses became part of larger negotiations. Fighter contracts started including language about bonus expectations, about what constituted bonus-worthy performances. Agents started using bonus history in contract negotiations. My guy has earned 3 performance bonuses in his last 5 fights, became a selling point for getting a better deal. I've got fighters who will change their entire game plan because they think it gives them a better shot at a bonus. Guys who should be wrestling are staying on their feet trying to get a knockout. Submission specialists are abandoning their ground game to throw wild punches, hoping to create a moment that gets rewarded. It's affecting the sport itself, and that's something I never intended. The Khabib situation really opened my eyes to how broken some people thought the system was. Here's a guy who dominated every opponent he ever faced, who retired undefeated, who brought an entire region of the world to the sport, and people were constantly asking why he wasn't getting more performance bonuses. The answer was simple. His performances weren't the kind of moments that created viral videos or highlight reels that casual fans could appreciate, but try explaining that to someone from Dagestan who thinks their champion was being disrespected. That whole controversy made me realize that the bonus system had become about more than just business decisions. It had become about respect, about recognition, about fighters feeling like their contributions to the company were being acknowledged. And when you make it about respect, every decision becomes personal. I started having to consider things that had nothing to do with what happened inside the octagon. The fighter who just lost his parent and put on a brave performance despite everything going on in his personal life. The veteran who was probably fighting for the last time and gave everything he had against a younger, stronger opponent. The guy from a country we were trying to expand into who just gave the fans in that region something to be proud of. None of that has anything to do with knockouts or submissions or fight of the night performances, but all of it affects the business, affects the relationships, affects whether fighters want to work with us or start looking at other options. The complaints keep coming, though. Fighters who think the system is rigged, who believe that certain fighters get preferential treatment, who see patterns that may or may not actually exist. And maybe they're right about some of it. Maybe there are times when the business side overrules what should be a simple decision about who put on the best show. And I'll give you an example that still bothers me. We had this card where a young prospect from Europe scored an incredible comeback victory, down 2 rounds, got hurt badly in the 3rd, somehow managed to turn it around and get a submission with less than a minute left. Incredible heart, incredible technique, exactly the kind of moment that makes you believe anything can happen in this sport. But that same night, we had an American fighter get a first-round knockout against an opponent who was supposed to be a tough test. The American got the bonus. Why? Because we were trying to build him up for a title shot, because his knockout helped sell the narrative we needed for the next few months of that division. The European kid never complained publicly, but I knew he had to be wondering what he had to do to get recognized. His performance was probably better from a pure sporting perspective, but the business of the sport demanded different priorities. This is the part of the job that nobody sees, that nobody wants to acknowledge exists. Every decision has consequences that go beyond one night, beyond one fight, beyond one fighter. The bonus I give out tonight affects contract negotiations next month, affects which fighters get offered big fights next year, affects whether we can build the storylines that sell pay-per-views and create new stars. Sometimes I wonder if we should just get rid of the bonuses entirely, make them automatic based on specific criteria. Every knockout gets $50,000, every submission gets $50,000, every fight that goes to a decision and gets scored a certain way by the judges gets rewarded. Take all the subjectivity out of it, remove the politics, eliminate the complaints about favoritism. But then I think about all the moments those bonuses have created, all the incentives they've provided for fighters to take risks, to go for the finish instead of playing it safe, to give fans the kind of entertainment that makes them want to come back for more. The system isn't perfect, but it works. Most of the time, the real issue isn't whether the bonuses are fair. The real issue is whether we're honest about what they're really for. They're not participation trophies for good performances. They're business tools for building stars, creating moments, and managing relationships. Sometimes that aligns with rewarding the best performances of the night, and sometimes it doesn't. Every time I hand out those checks, I know that 3/4 of the roster is going to go home wondering why their performance wasn't good enough, why their moment didn't matter, why their contribution to the show wasn't valued the same way as the guys who got rewarded. That's just the reality of running a business where you can't make everyone happy, where every decision creates winners and losers, where the politics are just as important as the performances. The questions about the bonus system aren't going away. If anything, they're getting more complicated as the sport grows, as more money gets involved, as fighters become more aware of their value and more demanding about recognition. But changing the system now would create more problems than it would solve. Sometimes you've got to stick with what works, even when what works isn't perfect, even when what works isn't always fair. That's the business we're in. That's the choice I make every time those fights end, and I have to decide who goes home with an extra $50,000. It's not always about the best fight, it's not always about the most impressive performance, and it's definitely not always fair. But it's always about what's best for the company, what's best for the sport, and what's best for the long-term success of everything we've built here. Whether people like that answer or not, that's the truth, and that truth isn't changing anytime soon. But let me be completely honest about something else. There are nights when I go home and second-guess these decisions. When I think about that young European fighter who got passed over, or the veteran who gave everything in what might have been his last fight, and I wonder if we're losing something important about what this sport is supposed to represent. I remember being a young guy grinding it out in Boston, watching other people get opportunities I thought I deserved, feeling like the system was working against me. Maybe that's why these bonus conversations hit different than other business decisions. Every fighter who feels overlooked reminds me of that version of myself, and that's not easy to ignore. The truth is, we've created a monster with these bonuses. They were supposed to be a simple reward for exceptional moments, but now they've become this complicated web of expectations, politics, and business calculations. Fighters plan their entire camps around getting bonus-worthy performances. They take risks they shouldn't take. They abandon game plans that would help them win fights, all chasing that 50 grand. And here's what really keeps me up at night. Sometimes the system rewards the wrong things. We give bonuses for spectacular failures, for guys who get caught trying to create highlight reel moments instead of winning fights. Meanwhile, the fighter who executes a perfect game plan, who shows incredible discipline and intelligence, who wins every round convincingly but doesn't create any viral moments, he goes home empty-handed. That's backwards, and I know it's backwards, but changing it now would mean admitting that we've been doing it wrong for years, and that's not something a company like ours can afford to do. So we keep playing the game, keep managing the expectations, keep making decisions that we know aren't always fair, but serve the bigger picture. The fighters who complain the loudest about the bonus system are usually the ones who understand it the least. They think it's about merit, about who worked hardest or performed best. But it's never been about merit. It's about moments, about storylines, about what serves the business. That's not fair, but fair isn't the same thing as effective. Every time I hand out these bonuses, I'm making a statement about what we value as a company. And sometimes what we value isn't what we should value, but it's what we need to value to keep this machine running, to keep growing, to keep giving opportunities to the next generation of fighters who are going to have their own complaints about how unfair the system is. Maybe that's the price of building something this big. You have to make compromises that eat at you. You have to accept that perfect fairness isn't compatible with successful business. You have to live with decisions that you know aren't always right, but are necessary for everything else to work. I've learned to sleep at night by focusing on the bigger picture. For every fighter who gets passed over for a bonus, there are 10 others who get opportunities they never would have had without the platform we built. For every unfair decision, there are countless fair ones that nobody talks about because fairness isn't controversial, fairness doesn't generate headlines or social media debates. The bonus system isn't broken, it's just honest about what it really is. It's a business tool disguised as a reward system, and maybe that's okay as long as we stop pretending it's something else. The fighters who understand that, who learn to work within the system instead of fighting against it, those are the ones who succeed, not just in the octagon, but in the business of fighting. The complaints will keep coming. The questions about fairness will never stop, and I'll keep making decisions that I know will piss people off. That's the job. That's what I signed up for when I decided to be the guy making the calls instead of the guy questioning them.